Good morning all, and you're very welcome to this session of the Intertrade Ireland All-Ireland Innovation Speaker Series, which is focused on the entrepreneurial ecosystem and the role that the university plays in its nurturing and growth. In today's session, we're joined by Dr. Sarah Lubik of Simon Fraser University in Vancouver. Sarah is a lecturer in entrepreneurship and innovation, together with being co-champion of the Technology Entrepreneurship at SFU program. Sarah's research is focused on supporting university-based entrepreneurship and innovation commercialization. She has published widely, including prestigious journals such as Technovation, R&D Management, and Long Range Planning. Sarah, sincere thanks for joining us during this virtual talk today.
Thank you for having me.
No, thanks very much. And it's a pity you can't be here in Ireland, but hopefully we can rectify that at some stage in the future, definitely.
I would love that. And I'd like to introduce you to, I know, Lawrence, you've met Alice in Wonderland, but she's decided to join us.
Okay.
So, yeah.
That's good. And for those who can't see it, that's the cat that she has. You're slightly out of shot there. So, Sarah, can I just start our conversation on the entrepreneurial ecosystem by asking you to give an overview of the SFU ecosystem context, if you wouldn't mind.
Absolutely. Well, the first thing you need to understand about SFU is that it was a university launched on, let's go with hippie principles in the 1960s. We have a prize for controversy, and we are Canada's engaged university. And so we're very much about making a difference in the world. And our approach to entrepreneurship and innovation has always been a little bit unique. And I think that's a good thing. So where a lot of universities suffer from silos across disciplines, I think one of the things that, SFU started and immediately started having protests, and people would walk down from the different classrooms and protest together, and we continue to get out of our departments and go do cool things together. And so you get a lot of interdisciplinary collaboration. And even at the BD School of Business, where I'm a lecturer and the director of the Charles Chang Institute for Entrepreneurship, we have a lot of faculty members within innovation who are other things as well. So they're innovation and comp sci, they're innovation and manufacturing, I'm innovation and commercialization. And science commercialization. And so there, by nature, is this different interdisciplinary context. And one of the other pieces that makes us unique is that we're very much about solving real problems. So we're entrepreneurial in spirit. So where a lot of schools will adopt best practice, SFU has a tendency toward creating best practice based on the needs of our ecosystem. So this dates back to the mid-2000s, where students were starting to find their ways into local incubators because they were becoming entrepreneurial. And so the comp sci department got together with the business department and the Surrey campus, so we have 3 campuses, and with the tech transfer office, and started creating programs for students to create their own opportunities. And we've also had Canada's first management technology MBA, the first totally interdisciplinary certificate in entrepreneurship and innovation for undergrads. We've built a program called Invention to Innovation, which teaches scientists how to commercialize their own stuff and build the entrepreneurial mindset. And based on a really unique insight that so often we try to throw scientists in the deep end and we try to make them into entrepreneurs without respecting all the different contexts that is available for scientists that needs to be taken into consideration. And so I think the last part is that we very much take an ecosystem perspective. And so we don't just work within the university, we have partnerships as far down as elementary school in entrepreneurship, knowing that entrepreneurial mindset starts very, very early. And we were the first school in the country to give university credit for a high school entrepreneurship program, to say that this needs to be on the same level as the other things you can take in high school to get credit for, and to realize that as a university, we have a moral obligation to show students that this is this thing that they need. And then all the way through every faculty, through grad and undergrad and the early stage incubator and then later stage and onward. And so we've been very much about building this continuum of entrepreneurial mindset and entrepreneurial experience. So it's sort of SFU's secret sauce.
Okay. Can I ask, in relation to the broader outside of the university, the Vancouver region, what type of entrepreneurial activity is going on there? Is it a particular sector? Is there much multidisciplinary collaboration going on, and so on?
Yeah, there's quite a bit going on in Vancouver. It's quite a cool startup ecosystem, partly for the diversity it has. So there's a ton, like pretty much everywhere else, there's a ton of tech entrepreneurship, sometimes to our detriment. And I know you've got questions about that later. But we've also got quite a robust science-based ecosystem. So we have, because of SFU, we also have UBC, a couple of other universities. We have research-based innovation that's come out here. So there's quite a lot of fuel cell and materials capabilities here. And there's precision medicine coming here and that kind of thing. There's also, and this might partly be hippie, partly be West Coast, we have quite a lot of social innovation happening here as well. And a lot of impact entrepreneurship as well. So I think our ecosystem it's got a lot of diversity. It's got a lot of support programs. There's a lot of interest in innovation. And I told myself I would wait to give this part of the answer, but apparently I'm going down this road, which is that sometimes we emphasize tech to our own detriment, because the Canadian ecosystem, we subsidize quite a lot of tech development through government grants, etc. We don't really have the commensurate support for the commercial side, the business side. And what that leaves you is, what you emphasize and what you reward is what you get. So there's a lot of really cool tech. It may not necessarily have had some really amazing market fit. So that's a place where I think we're starting to adapt. So that eye-to-eye program that I told you about is partly in response to this. It's great to have science, but what are you going to do with that? How are you going to create the people who can take that into their own ventures, into companies, into systems change? And similarly, for tech, great, you have, amazing technology. Is someone going to pay for it? Do you know how to create a scalable business? And so I think that might be the next stage that's happening in our ecosystem. And it's very much what we're trying to do at SFU with programs like the Eye-to-Eye, and also the tech entrepreneurship program, which is bringing students from mechatronics engineering and right across the university, entrepreneurship students in business and psychology and economics and et cetera, who learn very early on how to work in those interdisciplinary teams, how to understand opportunity recognition, how to not kill each other because they speak different languages. And we're also seeing quite a bit of success coming out of that program with companies that actually grow. And these ones that particular one is started by undergrads, and they're still becoming successful entrepreneurs, or at least seeing early successes. So very much trying to tackle those challenges as well.
Yeah, that ties in very much with what Ricardo Finney will be talking about on Friday in relation to the power of the graduate entrepreneur rather than the academic. There's a lot more of them than us, and they're actually more hungry, and they can be a real powerhouse in a region. In relation to SFU, you seem to be very responsive to the needs of your ecosystem in developing these programs. Maybe you can talk a little bit, give me a bit more detail about the technology entrepreneurship at SFU, or some of the other initiatives that you've taken.
Sure. So let me take you across the continuum and give you little bites. So the program that we work with in elementary school. So we a couple of years ago had a newspaper columnist come and write about this partnership, and we get student mentors involved with these, grade 4 to 8 students who are starting ventures like a science fair. And the reason we're interested in this was because we realized that students were getting to university and they've had that mindset beat out of them, right? They start learning achievement mindset. So how do I get good grades? Versus entrepreneurial mindset, how do I be curious and future focused? And one of the most beautiful things that we've seen about this program is that, and about one of the things I love about entrepreneurship in general is that you can take your own gifts and make the difference that you want to see. And so often, traditional schooling, your gifts better be the same gifts as everybody else. Where if you are a student who's got an interest in wiring or mechanics or what have you, or you know how to crochet or what have you, there's no reason you can't be a 10-year-old with their own Etsy shop. Right? So we found that we wanted to encourage them to continue with this mindset all the way through. And so we've got to partner with them. We get our students in being mentors. We bring them to, we have a big showcase called Opportunity Fest that has our undergrads and high school students and these guys. And they're very serious about it. But it also engages students who otherwise don't necessarily feel like school is for them. And so it has a bunch of ecosystem effects. And I think that actually speaks to another thing that is, Ricardo will probably speak to this as well, which is the importance of culture, right? And understanding where you have switches and mechanisms to shape culture. And this mindset and this culture happens very, very early for these kids. It can be influenced by the other kids that they meet, by their parents, etc. And the university getting involved in entrepreneurship early on helps send that signal that this is important. This is important like math, or this is important like literature. And that's why we also have this program with Yell is the program, where they go into public schools and to high schools and help the teachers teach this amazing high quality curriculum and bring in industry and mentors and things like that. And then they bring them up to the university, well, not in COVID times, but before that, they bring it up to the university for a big showcase at the end where they got to see their entire community behind them. And it was such high quality that we thought, you know what, we could probably give credit for this, because we give credit for AP calculus, physics, etc. There should be something that's equivalent for entrepreneurship. And that helps continue to nurture that mindset until they get to us. And then they get programs like, this tech entrepreneurship program was founded by Ken Spencer, who unfortunately we lost this year, but he's one of the people who shaped the entire Vancouver ecosystem. So many of the companies that grew to be unicorns, someone got their start in his company called Creo, which was one of the biggest acquisitions in BC history. And what was special about Creo was Ken and his mindset that you shouldn't just be throwing things over the wall. Like, engineers need to speak business and know why they're making things, and business people need to understand what they're asking of engineers. And so Ken was actually, and at our Innovation Council, came together to fund this creation of this program, where students from different disciplines come together and they build market-driven societal solutions that are tech-enabled, but that actually will have a market, that it has a team that don't kill each other, that has funding. And that program, what we learned in that, helped us create our certificate in entrepreneurship, which is by every faculty for every faculty, has students from all of our faculties in it, because we know that this is what you need in a team, but also what shapes culture. So for your audience who wants me to cite something academic, there's a fantastic, I think Garamze and Bonet looked at Oxford, and they were looking at what kills entrepreneurial culture in a university. And the Coles Notes version is, most university entrepreneurship is just for business and engineering. Everybody else feels left out. If you feel left out, then you don't share ideas. If you don't share ideas, then you build no trust, and it reinforces. But you can reverse that. And so we've been very intentional about making sure that everybody feels not only that they can come, but that they are valued and that they have a contribution, and that also goes up to that eye-to-eye program I talked about, which is helping scientists value not only getting entrepreneurial skills, but how it complements their science. Not saying, okay, you're an expert in this, but that's not important anymore. Come be an expert in this. Say, can you be someone who walks between worlds? Because one of the most important things we can do is create people who can walk between worlds, who can make those connections for all the challenges that we need to unleash these people to help solve.
Can I ask, obviously, you do all of this work and you have your connection incubator as well that builds the linkages to the outside industry. Is that an easy connection to make with your local industry to get people to cross the door, to cross the ivory tower?
Yeah, I think the power play and the yell help with that, because it is really hard to say no to an 8-year-old who wants to sell you a crocheted Yoda. Like, good luck. And that also breeds that culture early on. Our students in the Venture Connection Incubator are volunteering in those programs, right? So they become volunteers very early on. We have amazing alumni like Charles Chang, who gave the donation to start the Chang Institute at SFU for entrepreneurship. And he also comes back and is involved in inspiring the students. And so there's this reinforcing cycle of all of the people who have come there. And also, like, Venture Connection was second or third, the jury's out depending on what you ask and whose opinion, in Canada of a student incubator. And so we have, oh no, it can't be that long, like 14 years of student ventures, and some of them are off in some of the fastest growing companies in Canada. And they know that, one of them comes back and he's like, well, I had one prof who sat with me through my terrible, terrible first pitch that I sweat myself through, but was willing to get me to the point where I could go and sign national companies while I was still an undergrad or just after graduating. And so I think it's also important to think about the long game of creating those behaviors and cultures very early. And then people come back and bring, when something is cool, they come back and bring their friends. Right. So continuing to cultivate that, and also to realize that our students are our best ambassadors. It's very hard for anyone to say no if your students start with, what, I think you're super cool and I really want to learn from you. Like, how do you say, no, sorry, I don't want to hang out with someone who thinks I'm cool? That's not, I don't have time for that.
Can I ask, in relation to, obviously Vancouver would have its own city governance or whatever, but in terms of, the city, the state, the nation interventions to actually encourage entrepreneurship, obviously it's a mixture of things that's going on, but what would be some of 2 or 3 of the key policies that you think at any of those levels that have done something different and made a difference for the region? So
one partner that we have that I've been really impressed with, that they're on the national level, is called MyTax. And MyTax is skills came out of universities, works with all of the universities to create internships, develop skills, develop skill-based programs. So eye-to-eye was first developed at SFU, and then we developed a version of it that is now right across the country with MyTax. And what I love about this program is that, or this partner, is that they are dedicated to skills. Because one of the things that I've seen, so I've been an innovation leader and I've studied this stuff and all the stuff. And one of the things that I often find discouraging is how many governments, they just want to hear about ventures, investment, employee growth. And you don't get those until you've developed the people and skills. But this is easier to count and to talk about in elections. And so you can often, especially when things get tough and budgets are getting cut, see the early stage suffer. And what MyTax does as a national platform is continues to emphasize the skills. And so I love that we have an entire organization that has that and has that as their primary focus to be internships and skill building. There's plenty of countries that don't have an equivalent of that, and so they're one that I really like. What else do we have that is awesome? The other one is, I guess, deciding, and I think I talked about this a little bit, my background being science commercialization. It's important to realize that if you're going to develop a great science ecosystem, and we have a pretty strong one here, you need to have some stuff that that people would be there for and would start a company there for and not leave. And we have at SFU, we have 40 labs. And 40 labs was something as a material science laboratory that was funded federally, but sits in Vancouver, is connected to SFU, but is open to industry. Like, you can come and use the facilities, get integrated with the researchers. We have spin-out companies that we have one that just IPO'd, but it was started almost a decade ago, and their science team is constantly integrated with that facility and with that science base. And that company wouldn't want to leave, because you have to go to someplace that also has a 40 labs, and there's not very many of those. And so I'm always impressed when government realizes there's something they want to be really good at and creates a resource that would be sticky and that would create gravitational pull. And 40 labs is another one that I think is a very cool operation, and making it something that you can just easily, as an industry member, access is that not everyone has that.
No, that's great. And the people that are driving the 40 labs, like we have Professor Nola Hewitt talking of, I think the title is Industries from Venus, Academia is from Mars. So the people driving it, have they a commercial background, or are they purely academic? To be able to speak to industry, to understand their pressures, rather than forcing industry to align to ours. Absolutely.
Actually, the person who was I should fact check myself whether he was the founding director, but I think he was. He's an academic material scientist who has had a spin-out company that grew for years. So he spoke industry, and I think he was part of Neil Branda, and I think he was part of that early understanding that you needed to make it easy to collaborate, otherwise nobody's coming. And we actually did have their director, so their head staff person, came through that eye-to-eye commercialization program to also be better at speaking between worlds and creating that business model for such a facility. And so I think we're starting to get better at that. And I'm sure Ricardo will talk about this too, but and this speaks to what I was talking about with the importance of skills and culture before you invest in the later stage stuff, is that we've also realized that it's the students, those grad students, and for science anyway, that also create the regional absorptive capacity. So the ability for the companies that hire them to actually do anything with the amazing stuff that's coming out of the lab, because they are those people who can translate, who can figure out what keeps the CEO up at night, and then how might I bring some of these awesome other things that I do to the table, right? And so having that, and having those students who can create those connections in the community and bring it back to those facilities also helps to continue creating that culture of being able to walk between worlds.
Excellent. Excellent. Obviously, Vancouver is a very vibrant entrepreneurial ecosystem at this moment in time, but like everything, there's always scope for improvement. What would be some of the things that are holding it back? And you can't say finance. Everybody says finance. So
I would say finance. Fair enough. So one is, I spoke about this earlier, this maybe overemphasis on technology versus product market fit. We have evidence to show that We are very good at subsidizing tech development. There are many programs. Go hire a co-op student, will subsidize you to do that, but it has to be a tech co-op student somehow. And then you think, if you're someone who's actually created a business, you know that you need everybody. You don't just need tech. And so I remember having one of our alumni come back from Silicon Valley, and he said, the biggest difference that I see is that if you have a 20-person company doing the same thing here in Silicon Valley, you'll have 8 people doing tech and 12 doing business development. In Vancouver, you will have 18 doing tech development and 2 doing business. And that speaks to how good the product market fit would be, right? And that is, it's not a rule, but we could get much better at it. And then the other one is, I've spoken a lot to what SFU is doing in building the early stage of the pipeline, but that could also be doubled down on and changing that culture, changing that, Yale, the one that I just talked about, is a charity that works with elementary schools, but they're not in every school, or in high schools, they're not in every school. They should be. Power Play is not in every school. It should be. Like, there are big, bold things we could do as an ecosystem to change culture very early, and I would love to see us do them. And I think we're starting to get enough momentum to do that, because it's a very good place to build things. I would love to see them more widely adopted and to see us very much focusing on that culture change.
Can I ask you, obviously, you're very familiar with a lot of the activities going on in the entrepreneurial ecosystems across the globe. Mm-hmm. What other areas do you focus? What are the other sites? You mentioned Silicon Valley, but what are the interesting cases that are doing something different?
Yeah, I'm very much influenced. I'm reading Innovation in Real Places right now by Dan Bredsnitz, which is a fantastic book. And I love that he says directly, can we stop trying to be Silicon anything? Like, stop trying to just copy that model. You don't have the same capabilities. Figure out who you are. And it's funny because I often see that any kind of really insightful innovation theory somehow is exactly what you would tell a person who was in therapy. Like, stop trying to be somebody else. Figure out what you're good at and be the best of that. We tell children that, and yet we forget it when we're doing regional development. Yeah. And we've got. I was thinking about this question before and thinking, Shenzhen in China is the giant version of what I was talking about with 4D Labs. So you create something that it would be very hard to create anywhere else. You can do prototyping there faster than, like, hardware development prototyping there faster than anywhere else. And it was because they decided we're going to go hard in this direction, right? There's been talk of Boulder, Colorado, and them being competitive as a place to start a business, as a place that you would not usually think that, because they decided to make themselves incredibly welcoming to innovative companies and startup companies. And so they created that North Star and then said, we're going toward that rather than what could we copy? Like, we're academics. We want to learn from what other people are doing, obviously, but you can't just take someone's model and do something else. There's another, I think it's Zurich in Switzerland, had this industrial area that had been run down, and they turned it into a vibrant, I'm losing the word, but essentially they take this big bridge with all those arches underneath it and started building, little industry and maker spaces and textile companies, etc. And it became a very cool up and coming area. But it was because they thought about, what is our history? And I can't remember what book I'm about to quote, but it's very much around honor your history. And it's going to bother me that I can't remember what book I'm quoting, but it is very much about honor your history, understand your real personality, and then set a goal for where you actually want to go, and don't try to be everything to everyone, right? Okay. Try to actually care about what you're going to do.
I think that's an excellent place to end our conversation. It's been a real joy talking to you. You're incredibly passionate about what is. And I think the importance of highlighting that, be true to yourself and be true to the region and your history, and not try and copy Silicon Valley comes through, and building the self-efficacy of the next generation of entrepreneurs very early on is something that we can all learn for. So listen, I would like to thank you for giving up the time. I hope you have a lovely evening there. It's just gone midnight here, so there was a reason we didn't do this live, but thank you again, and I'll just stop the recording now, and
Thank you
God
for having.
bless.
Thank you.